Good morning, faithful listeners. You have tuned in to the P40 Ministries podcast, the one place where you can get a daily explanatory Bible reading to start your day strong. This is your host, Jen, bringing you a brand new episode out of Genesis. Hey, good morning, friends and faithful listeners. This is your host, Jen, with the P40 Ministries podcast. And I also have a guest on the podcast this morning. This is a returning guest. This is my good friend and brother-in-law, Pastor Mike Bird. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself for the people who are new to the podcast and haven't heard your voice before.
Well, thanks for having me, Jen. I'm married to your sister. Her name is Jamie. We've been married for about 13 years. We have a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm an elder at Pleasant Ridge Christian Fellowship in Middlebury, Indiana.
Well, nice to have you back on the show with us again, Mike. You had a lot of great insights last time. If you don't remember Mike, I think he was my very first guest on this podcast, and I think we talked about Genesis chapter 3 or something like that. That was a long, long time ago, before we talked about any of Noah's story or Abraham's story or anything like that. So you should definitely go back. For those of you who haven't heard Mike's input on the show, definitely go back and listen to that one. But today we are going to be talking about Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 through 11. And I think you guys have heard that this is one of my favorite stories in the entire Bible. I just absolutely love the story of Joseph, and I've been kind of gushing about that for the past couple days now, how excited I am to start talking about this. So we will be reading out of the W.E.B. version of the Bible this morning, but you, of course, can read out of whatever version you prefer. So grab a cup of coffee while Mike reads this section of the Bible for us.
Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of his father's travels, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought an evil report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a tunic of many colors. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, and they hated him and couldn't speak peaceably to him. Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves came around and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers asked him, "Will you indeed reign over us? Will you indeed have dominion over us?" They hated him all the more for his dreams and for his words. He dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed yet another dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me." He told it to his father and to his brothers. His father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Will I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves down to the earth before you?" His brothers envied him, but his father kept this saying in mind.
So, Mike, what's your first impression of Joseph just from this little story that we just read here in the Bible?
Well, I think you could look at a couple things. First of all, we can definitely see Joseph as one that has favoritism being put upon his life. And it comes through the text, and it's evident in the fact that his dad makes him that special coat, and there's a lot of jealousy from his other brothers. But of course, I mean, all those brothers were from different mothers, so there's obviously a lot of family dysfunction here in this family here.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, especially with what we've been studying recently with Levi and Simeon going and killing that entire town of people, and the favoritism that was happening in this family. It was just kind of insane. So, and it even says here that Joseph was the favored one of his father. Where does it say that? It says in verse 3, it says, Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children because he was the son of his old age. And I would also guess that it was because of Rachel as well, who was Israel's favored wife. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And, just even going with that whole favoritism thing, it says there that he made him a tunic of many colors. Like, to think about that he would make that, it was handmade, and it was something very special. None of the other brothers got that. And having something of many colors that was very valuable and very costly. So obviously you definitely see that favoritism just being lavished upon Joseph.
Mike, were you the favored kid in your family or no?
That's kind of a funny question. I have an older brother and a younger sister, so I'm the middle child. And they say sometimes the middle child gets neglected. I would definitely say that there was some neglect there.
I was just wondering. So what do you think about this dream that Joseph is dreaming here in verse 5 and 6, and also in verse, actually all the way down to verse 11? What do you think of these dreams that he has? Do you think these dreams are kind of coming about because he is the favored, or do you think he has some sort of gift that was given to him by God, or what do you think about these dreams?
Well, one thing that we have to remember is God's sovereignty and God's plan for the Jewish nation or his chosen people. I mean, this goes all the way back to when God called Abraham, and he called him out of that pagan nation. He called him out of that pagan lifestyle. And he says, I want you to get up. I'm going to take you and show you a land that I'm going to put you in. And Abraham obeyed. And then there was that covenant that was made between God and Abraham. And this is just a continuation of that. And then, of course, I'm sure you looked at the whole thing with Jacob and the time that he had a wrestling with the Lord, and he changed his name now to Israel. Mm-hmm. And here it is. I mean, here's Jacob. He's tells him here he has his children, Jacob here. He has Joseph. And I'm sure Jacob knows that God is doing all these things, but how it's all going to come about, Jacob really didn't see that. And he was actually going to use Joseph in an amazing way that you'll come to find out as you continue to read through. So did Joseph have this gift of being able to have these dreams? I don't think it was something that Joseph was necessarily seeking. I think it was just something that happened. And he's saying, hey, look, this happened. I had these dreams, and I'm going to tell you about them. And unfortunately, his family didn't care too much for his dreams.
Yeah, it actually says that they hated him all the more because of the dreams. So yeah, they really did not like Joseph here. And actually it says they couldn't even speak peaceably to him in verse 4. So it's probably pretty clear how much Joseph's brothers hate him. Joseph can probably sense this because they can't speak peaceably to him. But my question is, Mike, do you think Joseph was kind of rubbing these dreams in a little bit, or do you think not? What do you think about that? Do you think Joseph was kind of arrogant or happy to be the favored child and knew that he was? What do you think?
Well, I think there's definitely two things at work here. One, I think Joseph did know that he was the favored child. I mean, first of all, to get a tunic of many colors, and I'm sure that Jacob made it known that Joseph is my favorite child. I mean, it says he loved Joseph more than all of his children. I mean, I think he knew that. I mean, we see that in verse number 2, it talks about Joseph bringing an evil report of them to their father, almost kind of like he's tattling on them, saying like, Dad, look what my brothers are doing, or look what's going on. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Joseph knew that he was favored, but also I have to look at this and think, here is God giving Joseph these dreams. And, when God does something in your life, or God shows you something in your life, I think it's something that you want to speak about. I think it's something that you want to talk about. And you see that he says in verse number 6, it says, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. Almost in a sense of saying, listen, look, I want to tell you something that God has shown me, and it's real, it's truth. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to listen to things that God tells us or shows us. And I think that that's what was going on in Joseph's life.
Yeah, because in verse 11, it says that his brothers envied him because of these dreams, but his father kept this saying in mind. So yeah, before, I think it's in verse 10 here, it says that Jacob, or Israel at this point, actually scolded Joseph for the dreams that he had, but he still kept these dreams in his mind. So maybe Israel kind of had an inkling that this was something more than Joseph just bragging, and maybe it was some sort of God-given gift, these dreams, and that's why he ended up keeping these dreams in mind, even though originally he scolded Joseph for them.
Well, and, one thing that I think about as well is, again, going all the way back to Abraham. I mean, when God told Abraham, I'm going to make of you a mighty nation, and he's telling him that out of his seed is going to come this mighty nation. The blessing is going to come through. I mean, you got to think that Abraham was thinking, oh, yeah, it's going to be me. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. And then yet what happens? Well, Abraham dies, right? But then you have his son. You have Isaac there. And same thing, you have Isaac thinking, oh, yeah, it's going to be me. It's going to be me. The covenant, the promise is continuing. But what happens? You have Isaac, you have Jacob and Esau. Well, then we know the whole story there with Jacob and Esau. Jacob deceiving Esau, Esau selling his birthright. I mean, it's just a continuation. And now here's Jacob thinking, and you hear what he says. What is this dream that you have dreamed? Will I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves down to the earth before you? I don't think Jacob was seeing the grand scheme, this unfolding drama of redemption that is in and throughout all of Scripture. It's a continuation, and Jacob was not seeing the full end of all of that. And again, I don't even think Joseph even knew that as well. I mean, Joseph didn't know what was going to happen through all of this. He didn't know what was going to be happening. Sure, that you'll be covering in later episodes, but it's an understanding of what God is doing and seeing that God is at work behind the scenes. And I don't think Jacob really grasps that.
That's a really good point that I never thought of before, that possibly Jacob was the one who believed that those promises were going to be his completely, rather than being passed down to his sons. And yeah, I never thought of that before. So thank you for those insights, Mike. I really appreciate you coming back on the show with me. And eventually, I'm sure we'll do another podcast episode one of these days together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate it.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to tune in tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for an episode out of Matthew. We will be discussing Matthew chapter 17 tomorrow, so definitely make sure to join in then. And keep an eye out for those coloring books that are coming out. I am in the process of formatting them, and then they will be hopefully on Amazon in the next week or so. So I will keep you guys updated on that, and stay tuned for that. But guys, I want to ask all of you that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy listening, and God bless.